Welcome back, everyone. Today we've got another massive Dallas Cowboys update filled with injury news, trade rumors, surprising depth chart developments, and potential cut candidates that could completely reshape the roster as the preseason winds down. The Cowboys are no strangers to drama around this time of year, and as always, when the spotlight shines on America's team, every minor storyline feels like it could turn into a major headline. But what makes this moment particularly interesting is how multiple pieces are suddenly coming together, forcing the front office and coaching staff to make decisions that could change the look of this team heading into the season. So, let's break it all down, because there's a lot to unpack, from Luke Schoonmaker's injury, to chatter around Jalen Tolbert being dangled in trade talks, the sudden rise of Jaydon Blue, and of course the list of surprise cut candidates who could be gone before we even get to week 1. We start with Luke Schoonmaker, the Cowboys' young tight end who was drafted in the second round last year with the hope that he would develop into a versatile weapon for Dak Prescott. Expectations were that he would form part of a dynamic 1-2 punch alongside Jake Ferguson, giving Dallas a pair of reliable pass-catching and blocking options at the position. However, injuries continue to be the recurring theme in Schoonmaker's young career, and unfortunately the latest update has once again raised concern among fans. Reports indicate he's been dealing with a lingering hamstring and foot issue, which has limited his ability to fully participate in training camp. Every time it feels like he's on the verge of making a breakthrough, some sort of setback stalls his progress. For a team that values consistency and availability at tight end, this is more than just a small hiccup. It could change how the Cowboys build their offense this season. The question being asked now is simple: can Dallas trust Luke Schoonmaker to be ready when the regular season starts? If the answer is no, the Cowboys might need to lean heavily on Ferguson as the primary guy and then bring in depth either through a veteran signing or by giving more snaps to younger players like Peyton Hendershot. The tight end spot is too important in this offense for the Cowboys to risk going into the season short-handed, especially considering Dak's tendency to rely on his tight ends as safety valves in critical moments. While the Cowboys have publicly remained optimistic about Schoonmaker's recovery, the frustration among fans and analysts is growing, and it begs the larger question of whether Dallas made the right move by spending such high draft capital on a player who hasn't yet lived up to expectations because of his inability to stay healthy. While Schoonmaker's health looms large, there's another rumor swirling around that has Cowboys Nation buzzing: Jalen Tolbert potentially being put on the trade block. Now, this one is interesting because Tolbert was another player Dallas had high hopes for when they drafted him in the 3rd round back in 2022. He was seen as a future complement to CeeDee Lamb, potentially even growing into that WR2 role that has been such a revolving door for this team over the years. But the reality is, Tolbert has struggled to find consistency, and despite flashes of talent, he hasn't been able to break out in the way many expected. His preseason this year has been a mixed bag, showing some improvement, but also raising questions about whether he can carve out a meaningful role in a crowded wide receiver room. With Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup already entrenched as the top 3 receivers, and younger players like Jalen Brooks pushing hard for a roster spot, it makes sense that Tolbert's name would surface in trade talks. For the Cowboys, moving Tolbert could accomplish 2 things: clearing up some of the logjam at wide receiver while also bringing back draft capital or depth at another position of need, perhaps on the offensive line or in the secondary. Several teams around the league are still desperate for wide receiver help, and Tolbert's talent, combined with his rookie contract, makes him an intriguing buy low candidate for a front office looking to take a chance. While nothing has been confirmed, the fact that Tolbert's name has even come up in discussions shows just how fluid this roster situation is right now. But just when it feels like the Cowboys might be losing ground with Schoonmaker's injury and Tolbert's uncertain future, another name has suddenly emerged out of nowhere: Jaydon Blue. The young running back, who was more of an afterthought when camp began, has been turning heads with his quickness, explosiveness, and ability to make plays out of the backfield. At a time when the Cowboys are still trying to sort out exactly what their post-Tony Pollard backfield looks like, Blue has seized the opportunity and made a strong case for himself. He's been showing the kind of burst that makes coaches take notice, and he's already earned praise from teammates who see the potential for him to carve out a role in this offense. The rise of Blue adds an interesting wrinkle to the Cowboys' running back situation. Right now, Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn, and Malik Davis are battling for spots, and there was an assumption that the Cowboys might look for a veteran signing to stabilize the group. But Blue's emergence could change that conversation. If he continues to impress during preseason games, it will be hard for the coaching staff to justify cutting him, which means someone else in that running back room could be on the way out. It's the kind of camp surprise that often forces front offices to reevaluate their plans, and for Cowboys fans, it's exciting to see a new face stepping up when the team needs it most. Of course, every year, there are always surprise cuts, and this season is shaping up to be no different. The Cowboys are loaded with talent, but roster spots are limited, and that means some familiar names may not make it to Week 1. One name that's been floated is Neville Gallimore, the defensive tackle who has been with the team since 2020 but hasn't quite developed into the impact player Dallas hoped for. With younger players stepping up on the defensive line and Dan Quinn looking for more consistency in the trenches, Gallimore could be one of those surprise cuts that catches fans off guard. Another name to watch is Kelvin Joseph, the cornerback who has been up and down since joining the Cowboys. While his talent is undeniable, inconsistency and off-field distractions have limited his ability to cement a starting role. With Trayvon Diggs, Darren Bland, and Stephon Gilmore leading the way, the cornerback room is stacked, and Joseph may find himself the odd man out unless he makes a strong push in the final weeks of preseason. Similarly, wide receiver Simi Fehoko could also be at risk. Despite his size and athleticism, Fehoko hasn't managed to crack the rotation in a meaningful way, and with younger receivers like Brooks emerging, his spot could be in jeopardy. The cut candidate conversation isn't just limited to role players. Even veterans like Cooper Rush, the longtime backup quarterback, are facing scrutiny. With Trey Lance in the building, the Cowboys might decide to go in a different direction at Q2, especially if they believe Lance has the upside to develop into a future starter. While Rush has been a reliable presence, the NFL is a business, and sometimes tough decisions have to be made in order to maximize roster flexibility. All of these storylines, the Schoonmaker injury, Tolbert trade buzz, Jaydon Blue's breakout, and the looming cut candidates paint a picture of a Cowboys team that is in the middle of a critical evaluation process. Every training camp practice, every preseason snap, and every film session is being dissected to figure out who belongs and who doesn't. For fans, this is both exciting and nerve-wracking, because you want to see the team build the best possible roster, but you also know that means saying goodbye to players you've rooted for over the past few seasons. As the preseason finale approaches, these decisions will only intensify. Will Schoonmaker recover in time to be a factor, or will the Cowboys need to adjust their tight end plans? Will Tolbert remain in Dallas, or will the team decide that it's time to cut their losses and move him while he still has trade value? Can Jaydon Blue really continue to shine and earn a roster spot, or will the Cowboys revert to safer, more experienced options at running back? And finally, which surprise cuts are waiting around the corner that will leave fans debating whether the front office made the right moves? One thing is clear, this Cowboys roster is still very much in flux, and the decisions made in the next couple of weeks could determine not only who takes the field in Week 1, but also how competitive this team can be over the course of the season. With Super Bowl aspirations once again hanging over their heads, the Cowboys can't afford to get these choices wrong. Every player who makes the 53-man roster has to be ready to contribute, because the margin for error in the NFC is razor thin. The 49ers, Eagles, and Lions aren't waiting around, and if Dallas wants to be taken seriously, they need to make sure the right players are in the right roles from day one. So buckle up, Cowboys Nation, because the next stretch is going to be filled with twists and turns. Injuries, trades, surprise stars, and tough cuts are all part of the NFL preseason drama, and when it comes to America's team, you can bet that the spotlight will shine brighter than ever. We'll keep tracking every development, but for now, the big stories remain Schoonmaker's injury setback, Tolbert's uncertain future, Jaydon Blue's surprising rise, and a list of potential cuts that could change the face of the team. And with that, we'll wrap up today's breakdown. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the latest Cowboys rumors and updates, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts on who should stay or go, and of course, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our future Cowboys coverage. This season is shaping up to be one of the most dramatic yet, and we'll be here every step of the way to bring you the latest news, rumors, and analysis.